climb right here. Whoa! That's a big garter snake. Want to see it? The great reveal. Look at it. That's beautiful. Hello there, nature lovers. Bob Ellis here with another episode of Notes from the Field. And today, I'm going to share something with you that is kind of a secret. Maybe it's the best kept secret in the world of ecology, but to be honest, it's not really a secret. It's more like information that's never shared. And I'll never really understand why that is, because it is some of the most important information in the world of ecology and will totally enhance your natural history practice. And this hidden world where this idea lives is just right over here under a log. Let's go look. There are beetles in here, inside this log, that decomposed cellulose. Let's dig around here a little bit. Maybe we can stir up a centipede. They're pretty ubiquitous. Oh, did you see that? That green beetle? That was a carrion beetle. They eat dead animal matter. So maybe there's something dead in here. Ooh, look at that. By biomass, earthworms make up the largest amount of animal matter in the soil community. Oh, there's another one. Ooh, that's cool. Come on, centipede. Look at this isopod. Call them roly-polies. It's a pretty ancient creature. Now, all of us are familiar with food chains, and the food chain that we're most familiar with is the food chain that's kind of the classic food chain. It's called the grazing food chain. And the grazing food chain rolls like this. Let's start with grass. That's the producer. And then there's a consumer of that grass, and let's say it's a cow. And then the next level of this food chain, there is something that eats the cow. Let's say it's a human. So that's the classic grazing food chain. Grass, cow, hamburger, human eating the hamburger. However, we rarely hear about another food chain, a food chain that runs parallel to the grazing food chain, and here's the big reveal. This food chain carries more energy than the grazing food chain, and that food chain is called the detrital food chain. And so in this diagram, I've put the two food chains one beside the other. Here's the classic food chain, where it's the grazing food chain, where they're the primary producers, typically plants. And this arrow points to the direction of energy flow. So up next trophic level are herbivores that eat those plants. And then up to the next trophic level are carnivores. And you can see the energy flowing from herbivores to carnivores. And we know from earlier videos that there's a loss of energy from each one of these trophic levels of 90%. So only 10% of the energy that is produced at this level is transferred up to this one. And then only 10% of the energy produced at this level is transferred up to this level. So this is one of the reasons why big, fierce animals are rare. Running parallel to this food chain, and in almost every ecosystem, terrestrial, aquatic, marine, there's a parallel food chain running. And it is called the detrital food chain. And here's the way it runs. There's detritus, and that's just simply dead organic matter that is consumed by decomposer herbivores. And as we looked under a number of those logs, we saw roly-polies. Roly-polies would be an example of this decomposer herbivores. They're eating dead plant matter. And then at the next level, energy is transferred to carnivores. And a good example of a carnivore in this decomposer food chain would be let's see, something that was eating those roly-polies. Maybe it's one of these big, enormous centipedes that's running around. They're kind of the tigers of the detrital food chain. Now I want you to notice this. This is the key feature and the important thing about this whole idea. You'll notice that at each one of these levels, that energy is transferred to the detrital food chain. And that is because stuff dies. So anything that dies is not consumed by this next level, is transferred over to this detrital food chain. That happens at this level, it happens at this level, and it happens at this level. So you can see why there's so much energy moving through the detrital food chain, and it's virtually unrecognized. And so as a practicing naturalist, one of the first things I do when I come into a new biotic community, I want to know about that detrital food chain and the organisms processing it, because these organisms are the organisms of the world of the dead. It's a total freak show going on in there. It's creatures like these enormous centipedes. And as you move smaller in size, some of these creatures become even more bizarre. So you move into the world of fungi. And the world of fungi is just absolutely fascinating. The world of bacteria. Those are all players in this detrital food chain. All right, y'all. I found this great big log here. And I think there's going to be some fascinating creatures from this world of the dead organic matter or detritus. And I'm going to flip this thing over to see what's under there. So it looks big, but it's actually pretty dried out, so it's not that heavy. Whoa. All right, let's see what's under this bark. And what's going on here, folks? This is a world of decomposition. And there's all kinds of stories right here that we can tell about the life that's in this world of the dead. And a big part of this story is about how decomposition happens. And so just like the master abiotic factors that control almost all life, temperature and moisture also control decomposition. So you increase temperature, increase moisture availability, and in this case, increase oxygen, you're going to increase opportunities for decomposition. You might be wondering, well, Bob, just exactly what is being decomposed? Well, in the world of plants being decomposed, there's two compounds that are super important. Actually, there's three, and I'll introduce you to them in the level of availability and digestibility. The first and most digestible compound out here would be simple sugars. So for example, if a leaf fell off a tree, organisms would first try to exploit those simple sugars because, like glucose, because they're easily digested. The next level of difficulty of digestibility and the most available compound out here for the world of the dead to thrive on is cellulose. Now cellulose is obviously quite a bit more difficult to digest than sugars. However, there's a whole host of organisms that can do that. Now moving on up to the level of difficulty, and the most difficult to digest are lignins. Now lignins are compounds called polymers, and they are complex molecules that are, here's a diagram of a lignin molecule. And you can imagine a whole bunch of these molecules connected together into a substance that is part of a tree. And lignins are virtually impossible to decompose. There's only a handful of organisms on this planet that can decompose lignins because they're that really complex and difficult to digest polymer. And the one set of organisms that can get energy out of that complex molecule are fungi called white rot. And we could probably see some in here. Let's dig into this because I think we haven't really seen what's in here. I've noticed here's some frass, so that means that there's some beetles drilling holes into this log, and as they drill the holes into the logs, they are producing fecal matter and sawdust. And the crazy thing about the world of the dead is that what is one organism's poop is another organism's food. So people ask me, well, Bob, isn't this kind of goofy because are these really two separate food chains running parallel to one another? Aren't there some places where they connect? And that's true. In the world of ecology, sometimes what we try to do is separate things to try to dig in to understand one element of the landscape and then back out to see how they connect to the other elements in the landscape. And clearly, the grazing and detrital food chain connect. But here's a little bit of information for you that might help you whenever you're out in the places you visit to see where they connect. And it's always a fascinating question to ask yourself, where are the detrital and the grazing food chains connecting? And typically they connect at this level because the carnivores in the detrital food chain, they really don't care about the herbivores that they're eating, if they're from this food chain or this food chain. Similarly, in the grazing food chain, these carnivores really don't care if they're eating herbivores that are from the decomposer food chain or from the herbivore food chain. So clearly, all these worlds are connected, the world of the dead and the world of the grazing. And it's interesting to see how they stand independent of one another. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is to go visit those places you like to visit and think about that detrital food chain. Explore it, dig into it, turn over a few logs, and maybe you'll come across a snake that is this organism in the grazing food chain that is working at this level. So folks, the beautiful thing about digging into the world of the dead is you never know what you're going to find. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you get a chance to make practice of it. If you have comments, go ahead and enter them down below, and why not subscribe? If you're interested, you can go over to our website, naturalhistoryinstitute.org, and make a donation in order to keep these videos coming to you. So thanks, and we'll see you later.